Okay, so we a good tvach. You there?
Yeah.
Hi,
I'm
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov, brother.
A good week, brother.
Thank you. All right, we're talking about eschatology. Is that what we're doing today?
Yes. Eschatology, that is correct. That is that means a belief about the end times.
The end times. I always find it strange. The end of days does not sound very Jewish at all.
No, but it means the
it comes from Torah.
Yeah.
I always thought it came from other religions. That it was.
You thought it was like Christological.
Yeah, but no, it comes Achras Hayama, but it's sounds so different when you say it in Hebrew.
Well, depends what tone you say it with. You know, if you make it like doom and gloom. And you know about there's this car driving through the country, a little country road, Sunday drive, driving down the road, do. And as he's driving, he sees on the side of the road two rabbis with long black coats and beards, black hats, and they're holding up a sign that says, turn back, the end is near." And the guy sees the driver sees the sign, and he screams, "You religious nuts, stop bothering people!" And he keeps driving full speed ahead. And all of a sudden, there's a loud crash and a splash. And one rabbi says to the other, says, "We should just change the sign to say bridge out ahead."
They weren't being religious nuts. They were just trying to help people.
Yeah, but they miswrote the sign. Yeah. Anyways, let's talk about eschatology.
Yes, let's talk about the end of days and Moshiach mindset. So the goal here is we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, let's set this up correctly. Okay. This is a part of an incredible new initiative from the Tut Alts initiative from Merkos 302. And I first became involved in this initiative last year. Around Chof Ches Nisan, there was an incredible 24-hour Farbrengen that was going on. And since then, there has been a lot of reawakening among just people in general. Anash, Lubavitcher Chassidim, who really hold dear the Rebbe Sichas, obviously, and are coming to a point where it's not just enough to revere these ideas, but we really want to apply it in the most practical sense. And that's what Tut Alts, taken the name obviously taken from the Rebbe's called Tut Alts was ihr kennt, to bring in Mashiach, and do everything that you can do to bring Mashiach. And so there's this new initiative to learn. I believe this week is the first week. I think they started off with us. Actually, they started off the two sisters Farbreng before us. Yeah. So we're the
I think this is the second week.
This is the second week,
or something like that.
Okay. So, anyways, but it's starting, and it's all around the world. And this week we're going to talk about the Sikha from Parshas Vayeshev Tavshin Nun Beis, primarily as a Sikha where the Rebbe gave us a real insight into what it means to have a Moshiach mindset. That's the real theme here. It's not enough to just look forward to Mashiach as something that will happen, and even to look forward to something that's going to happen imminently, and even to say it's something that we're going to cause, we're going to bring about, but actually even right now, before Mashiach comes, we want to already start to change our thinking to be a Mashiach mindset. And that's the theme that we're going to be discussing. And the learning that's going on all over the world among men, women, and children is this month. It is dedicated in honor and memory of an incredible man, incredible chassid, someone who I knew personally and admired, the shliach in Los Angeles, Rav Chassid, Rav Shimon ben Menachem Shmuel Dovid Halevi Reichik, Olav Shalom. And may this initiative be a merit for him, along with all of his countless merits as a shliach and a manig of a kehillah and a chassid of the Rebbe. Okay, so Dovid, what's up with Moshiach mindset?
No, you're
Throwing it back on you. Yeah.
I was just listening. Yeah. What are we talking about? Moshiach Mindset. It's what is it? Because I was thinking about it last night. We were talking about it in our by our Shabbos table, trying to figure out what that means. So there's specifically these sikhs that are going to show us particular ideas, but I think in general, there are ways. I assume there are ways to just do this on our own as well. I mean, total. It's not just the whole point is that we have to do everything we can do on our own as well.
You know what you remind me of, Dovid?
What?
I mean, let me just repeat what you said, maybe a little more explicitly. You're saying it's not enough just to do what the Rebbe told us to do. The Rebbe is saying, think of some of your own stuff, guys. Be a little bit creative. So that's what you were saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was saying it meekly.
I said it
because it's strangely somewhat controversial.
Strangely, you said strangely controversial?
Yes.
It is strangely controversial. You're correct. It is controversial, but it is strange that it is controversial because what should be strange about it? So I'll tell you something interesting. You said you were talking with your family last night. I did talk to my family last night, but I'm not going to show off about the fact that I talked to my family.
All right, sorry.
Okay. Whatchamacallit. So now you distracted me, David. Last night I was reading. You know what I was reading?
Mad Magazine?
No. I just did the fold in and then
all right.
I put it away. No, I was reading a court deposition. Yes. I'm going to law school. No, I was reading a court deposition from 1798. It was the Alter Rebbe's depositions that he gave over to the 22 questions that they interrogated him on during his first imprisonment.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it is cool. And I'll tell you something interesting, and it's very connected to what you just said, and we did not script this or plan this, but Hashem did. It's very connected to what you just said, that is strangely controversial, that the Rebbe wants us to think of our own stuff. It's also connected to the toichen of the Sicha Vayeshev Nun Beis, which we're going to discuss imminently.
Okay.
Imminently is a Mashiach word, by the way, so I used it.
Oh, it's a good word.
Yeah. So it's hasten.
Yes, hasten. Those are all words that are very easily accessible. People immediately relate to those.
Recognizable by people who speak the vernacular. So anyways, I was reading the depositions of the Alter Rebbe last night. And one of the things they were charging him with, the Misnagdim had said about the Chassidim, is they're starting a new religion. Now, why would the Russian Gentile imperial government care? Why do they care if anyone's starting a new religion? So the reason is because of the French Revolution. Because apparently very active in the revolutionary movement in France were some new religious movements like New Age. Now I'm going to say something that's going to, if this is on YouTube, unfortunately, it's probably going to draw all the kooks and conspiracy nuts to this video because YouTube's going to know that I said this word and then it's going to like actually put.
Yeah, the robots are going to feed it to the people who it's most dangerous for.
Right. So close comments, please. 2000 Initiative, please close comments on this. But the Illuminati and like Freemasons.
Okay, that all grew out of the French Revolution?
No, it didn't grow out of the French Revolution, but they were very involved in the French Revolution.
Okay.
And so the Russians didn't want to have a revolution that would throw over their king. And interesting, ironically enough, when they finally did have a revolution 120 years later, it was atheists who killed the Romanovs. I was like on the Smirnov bottle when it says purveyors to the Tsar until 1917. Why did they stop giving the Tsar mashke after 1917? What happened that the Tsar couldn't drink after 1917? Anyways, so that was a little gallows humor. Except it wasn't gallows. It was
never thought of that. That's not nice of the Smirnov brothers to just drop the guy. Like they couldn't purvey any vodka to that guy even after he wasn't the Tsar anymore. Yeah, well, they lined up the Romanov family and they killed him by firing squad. Oh, so then you couldn't do much purveying.
Except maybe Anastasia or the lady who claimed to be Anastasia, and you could all Google that later. Um, anyways, the Misnagdim said that the Chassidim were a new religion, like Scientology, Lahavdil, right? So they were saying like these guys are making up a new religion, a modern religion, and that would have been something that would make the Russians upset because they don't want any new religions because to them that's revolution.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things the Misnagdim said is, well, you see, they do stuff that we never did. They do new stuff. Like when they daven, they're very, they move around a lot. They gesticulate a lot. So that was one of the 22 questions the Alter Rebbe had to answer. So the Alter Rebbe says in writing, yes, it's true. When we pray, we get excited, we move around. And he says, but I can explain to you very clearly that it's not because of any new religion that's being created here. You know what the Alter Rebbe says? And I thought it was just so fascinating.
Okay.
He said, we're doing it because we get excited. It's like, it's organic, it's authentic. We get excited and we move around. If we were doing it because it's our religion, then everyone would make the same movements. Everyone would make the same moves, but we're not doing it because it's our religion. We're doing it because we actually have, personally, each one of us is getting excited about the davening, so we move around. If it was a religion, we would make the same movements.
Is amazing.
Congregation, please rise.
So
right?
The only way of course, Lubavitchers, Chabad, we're going to be weird, but the way to show that our weirdness is part of Judaism is for us all to be weird a little bit differently.
That's correct. The way to show that it's authentic is that everyone's being weird as an individual.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it is wonderful. So you were saying something that's strangely controversial, which the Rebbe said, don't just, obviously, this is a yes and, because yes, everything that Rebbe said to us to do is ironclad, and we have to make sure to cling to that because those are the initiatives and the programs and the tools that we know have an impact. And in addition, the Rebbe is saying, figure out some stuff that I didn't tell you to do. And as you said, that's strangely controversial, but maybe we'll normalize it.
Hopefully. Well, what I was taught in yeshiva in Miami by Rabbi Label Shapiro was that every sikha is an opportunity to learn. That Rebbe is trying to teach you a specific way of learning so that you can do the same thing yourself and in different ways and apply it. So I hope we should try to do that. So specifically about Moshiach Mindset.
Yesterday's Rambam is talking about the menorah and saying which wicks and oils you can use in the menorah and the Beis Hamikdash. He's not talking about Hanukkah because we're not in Hanukkah. We're in Tamidim Musafim. But anyways, he mentions the idea of the reason why the wicks and oils have to be of a certain caliber because the flames have to light. They have to be self-sufficient. They can't be lights that go out. When you light it, has to burn strong and go continue on its own. And this is, the Rebbe used that mashal or used this as a mashal, as an analogy countless times for education, that it's not enough that a person heard what the teacher said. The person has to become imbued with the methodology. I think that's what you're referring to, what Rabbi Shapiro taught you, that it's a derech halimud. In the can I say this? Can I say something strangely controversial?
Please do.
Okay. Like in brisk, let's say, every brisker knows there's something called...
I didn't know you were going to talk about brisk, though. I'm sorry. We already let you go, so go on.
But any self-respecting brisker knows that there's a certain derech halimud with the brisker of established, and that's what it means to be a brisker, is to not just to know the chidushim, but to be able to learn that way and make your own chidushim, to be mechadish chidushim. And I think sometimes with Lubavitchers, with no one's listening, just me and you, that sometimes we're satisfied just being able to say what the Rebbe said, and yet the Rebbe is teaching a derech halimud. I'll give you a benign example because it's, I think, a little less controversial, but Rashi Sichos. Okay, Rashi Sichos, the Rebbe was modeling a methodology how to learn Chumash Rashi, and the Rebbe would actually, it's not in the Mugadik Sichos because these parts are extracted, but the Hanachas have it, public record. The Rebbe would complain How come I'm looking at the ha'aris, I'm looking at the articles, the scholarly articles, and nobody wrote, how come I'm the only one who's saying Rashi Sichos? I taught you the methodology, so right? Run with it. Yeah.
So maybe people will start writing Chedushim about Moshiach mindset.
Well, that itself would be Moshiach mindset. In fact, I would argue any Chiddush that you write is part and parcel of a Moshiach mindset, even if the topic itself is not overtly Moshiach. But having eyes, like the Rebbe said, uf effen in the egg, and opening your eyes. What does that mean? That means being able to perceive things. So when you notice something in Torah and you figure it out on your own, that to me is a Moshiach mindset.
All right, wonderful. Okay, so we've spent. I was going to talk to you about the Moshiach mindset that I thought of last night about lions, but I'm not going to, because we talked about a bunch of other stuff already.
No, go ahead. I would like to hear about lions.
Well, because all right, I was thinking Moshiach mindset. What does that mean? How do we think the way we're going to think when Moshiach comes? And I was thinking, all right, first of all, imagine you're in a world where you go to the zoo and there's no bars between the cages from separating the animals from the other animals.
Well, some people prefer that there should be no bars.
There's no bars, no zoos.
No, like a natural habitat.
Natural habitat. Imagine there's no barriers. There's no
barriers at all.
There's no, they like the height barriers, whatever. Imagine, but so in the times of Mashiach, you'll go to the zoo and you don't have to separate the predators from the carnivores from the herbivores.
That I didn't think of that.
Right. So just imagine, how would that change your brain? How would that change your brain? So next step is, wait a second, there's not going to be bars between the spectators either. Because the lion, those predators, those apex predators, the lions and the tigers, they're not going to try to eat you.
Wait, hold on a second. The first thing you were saying is you're not going to have to separate the wolf from the lamb.
No, right. You're not going to have to separate.
I'm saying wolf and lamb because that's the.
Yeah, even though most zoos don't have lambs, but imagine this one.
Well, lame zoos do.
Okay, but they probably don't have a wolf
zoo section. But a real Gesundte zoo, yeah, you're right, it does. Okay, but you won't have to separate, let's say, the lion from the gazelle.
Right, exactly. They're just going to chill together.
Then you're saying, and you won't even have to separate the lion from the people. The lion, you'll be standing in line to get popcorn, which will be kosher, might I add, because Shiach's here. And you'll look next to you, like, excuse me, sir. Oh, that's a lion.
And the lion's just hanging out there.
Next to you in line.
Yeah. Now, and so I'm going to jump a few steps further, but imagine how what your brain would work differently if you have had the experience of slipping your finger in between the toes of a lion's paw and understanding how the lion's paw works.
Yeah.
That's something I would do if there was a lion hanging out next to me. It's like I would hold its paw. What?
A tame lion in the times of Mashiach.
Yeah, not a tamed lion. Not like it's been clickered and buzzed and electrocuted.
No. No, tame meaning in the Messianic era.
Yeah, Mashiach, a lion that doesn't want to eat me.
You would handle its paws and see, like if you push on the pads, the claws come out.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, because you always like to tinker with things and take them apart and figure out how things work.
Yeah, well, because
much like your character in Mitzventions.
Not unlike my family. This is also strangely controversial. So my family in the past year got a dog. And I won't discuss whether or not the merits or lack thereof of that decision, but trust that our family had its reasons. So I found that just having that animal in our house and doing things like touching its paw and things like that gave me a sense of compassion, that a heightened sense of compassion I didn't have before. And I imagine if I had that closeness and intimacy with a lion, it would change the way I think.
Yeah.
And all right, so that would be like one of the ways I would get into a Moshiach mindset is think about, all right, so that makes
whole
me
lion thing.
What?
That was your whole lion thing.
Yes, is imagine the different person you would be if you had a meaningful, close experience if you could just have a meaningful, close experience with a lion at any given moment. Your experience with fear would be different. We have so much wired in our brain just to run from things and to fight or flight. Well, how would that change if we didn't have predators to flee from?
I think you're saying this as a marshal.
Am I?
I'm not sure.
Do you want me to be?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the lion thing's not resonating for me.
It's not resonating with you. Okay.
I don't know. I don't have fear. I don't have a phobia about lions.
Your heart rate would go up if you were near a lion.
I never had that experience.
Have you had the experience of being near an animal who made your heart rate go up? Even a scary dog.
The squirrel. A squirrel.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's birds. I'm terrified of birds.
Terrified of birds?
Yeah. But imagine if your heart rate didn't go up when you saw those birds. I mean, do you that just in that very tiny... you're saying it doesn't resonate with you because it's an experience that's not a huge part of your life, but
right. I'm afraid of other things.
But I think I'm not saying it as a muscle, because I think even those tiny little tweaks to the way your brain works would change the type of person you are. And I think if you add them all up, because we think about like the grand, amazing things, Tchias HaMesim and all of that, and but there's a million tiny little things that are what life would be a little bit different, that would change the way our brains work.
So what you're saying, basically, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that one of the things that will happen when Moshiach comes, although we probably don't think about it very often, is that with the elimination of all threat, not just the lion and the wolf becoming tame animals, which the Rambam says anyways is a metaphor, and there are different opinions, but whether you take it literally or especially if you take it metaphorically, and it means that there will be no hostile entities, no terrorists, no violent people or criminals or criminal states. If there will be peace in the world and prosperity and safety, so then you're saying we should consider the fact that in Mashiach's times, Poshet, the nervous system of a human being will be a lot more at rest.
Mm-hmm.
Am I following you?
Yeah, and I think it'll allow us to make decisions differently.
Okay, so but hold on a second, and it'll help us make decisions better, or you're saying differently. I would even say better, because we won't be distressed, so we'll be able to think more cerebrally rather than fight or flight panic mode. Okay. And then let me just make sure I'm following where you're going. Are you saying that one of the aspects of living with a Moshiach mindset as we prepare for Geula is to already try to transcend our fears and live with a greater sense of safety?
Yeah, I guess make decisions as if you, like any part of your decision making that's influenced by the fear of something getting you or hurting you or anything, just take that out of the equation.
Somebody, by the way, I can see in the Zoom put a lion puppet on screen. And you want to know something? My initial reaction was very that's beautiful. I wasn't threatened by it.
You did very good. So you're already living Mashiach.
I'm already living Mashiach. I saw the lion. I was like, oh, the lion's come to join us. That's so nice. I'll tell you something. I don't know if this is where you were going with this, but Wednesday night, I think it was Wednesday night. So I was in Monsey. It was a Farbreng with Rabbi Jacobson. And the title that we called it was, we're not bad people trying to become good, we're broken people trying to become whole. And it was based on the premise, we spoke about it for 7 hours. So if it doesn't make sense now, you can go to his website and watch the 7-hour replay. But anyway, one of the things that we were saying is, the Alter Rebbe, Yotes Kissel, we're talking about Tanya. So the Alter Rebbe doesn't talk about Yetzer Hara so much. He talks about more Nefesh Bamis. And what's a Nefesh Bamis? So I was explaining there, Nefesh Bamis has a job. Its job is survival. Nefesh Bamis has a job. He's not bad. He's doing his job. His job is to keep you alive. His job is self-perpetuation. Now, Nefesh Elokis has the opposite job. He doesn't want to preserve self. He actually wants to become bottled to Elokus. He wants the selfhood to disappear and melt away and become one with Hashem. But The Nefesh Bahamas's job is self-preservation. He reminds you to eat, and he reminds you to sleep and take a shower. He has a purpose that he fulfills. But what happens is that this survival impulse, this God-given survival impulse, gets warped, and it starts to make us do things as if they were life and death that aren't even good for us. Because of things generally that we learn during childhood, where we adapt to the dysfunction around us, and we figure out how to survive, how to feel safe as children, and then we find a tool that works for us as children, and then the animal soul just memorizes that and says, whenever such and such happens, whenever I get quote unquote triggered, that's my go-to response, and if I don't do it, I'll die. Because a Nefesh Bahamas is very black and white. Everything is life or death. It's all life or death. It's like everything is an existential threat, right? So when you're talking about this, one of the things I'm thinking about is, when two people are fighting, let's say, are they really fighting because they're such rishayim, like Dasan and Aviram fighting in Mitzrayim? They're such evil people that just I'm so evil that the only thing I can think of to do with my time is to go pick a fight with somebody, just because I'll just have such diabolical glee from taunting somebody. When people are fighting, no, nobody's like that. When people are fighting, you know why they're fighting? Because they feel threatened, because they're scared. Right. Can I say this? This is controversial. When one religious person who's governed by a religious code of ethics goes and hurts another religious person who's governed by a religious code of ethics, and he retaliates and hurts him back, and then they start volleying back and forth, tell me that the whole thing isn't predicated upon insecurity. Nobody's trying to be evil. They just feel threatened. So one of the things you're telling me, a Moshiach mindset, is that they're not trying to kill you. Right. Or at least try to. Okay, Moshiach's not here yet, so there are maybe people who do try to kill people. But when your wife says, "Did you take out the garbage?" She's not going to stab you with a knife. She's not going to kill you. And when some guy tells you, "Oh, I didn't buy the shipment from you. I bought it from your competitor." Okay, so it bothers you, but doesn't the Eibishter run the world? Isn't it true that in Odom Negeah b'Parnasos Shel Chavera, like no one's killing you, no one's murdering you? Or when you walk into shul and they don't say hi to you, oh, what an affront! Don't they know who I am? Nobody's killing you.
Well, I would go a step further and say that right now sometimes people are eating you a little bit. That guy, maybe he is not saying hello to you and she'll the dafka to snub you, but so maybe the lions are still eating us now.
Nibbling.
They're
nibbling. They're not chomping anymore.
But even when that's the case, it's still better. There is a value in making a Mashiach-based decision and thinking in a Mashiach way, and making the decision that is not based on on how that person is damaging me or how they could, but just on what is right. And even though I might get a little bit hurt.
No, but I like that. I like that. Basically, you're saying even if somebody is somewhat a threat, I can still make decisions based on Torah.
Yes. It ultimately will be more positive for myself and for the world and for everybody else.
Right. So
I might get a little bit dinged up in the process.
Right. So when I go to that Rav with that Choshen Mishpat Shaila, and he tells me to do something that I don't want to do because it's not good for my bottom line.
Right.
I can relax and just do what the Rav told me to do and not be scared.
Right. That's an example from your real life, because that's such a prevalent part of your life is your business shilas.
Well, you're mocking me now because you're saying that I haven't asked the Choshen Mishpat Shaila in years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I did have a question about whether my verbal promise to tip the garbage man was binding, but I hear things.
Right.
Not all my examples are my personal firsthand examples.
Not right.
Right. But I can give you, if you want personal, should I be vulnerable?
Maybe.
It's very...
Be vulnerable the way you would be if you had an experience where you held a lion's paw.
where I metaphorically, just so everyone knows, held the lion's paw. I held the lion's paw. You know what? YouTube, they took away the downvotes. You know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, a few days ago, they took away the downvotes. So a couple of weeks ago, oh, you were on my live stream. Remember my live stream I did?
I will. Oh, yeah. I did see that.
Well, you were on it.
I was for a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So Chaim Cohn, who was my co-host, he's my neighbor and my co-host. He was over at my house preparing for the live stream, and I was going through my YouTube channel. I think I was getting the live stream ready or something. And I looked at this video I did, and it had like however many upvotes, and there was one downvote. And I was like, ooh, who gave me a downvote? Who's the guy who gave me a downvote?
The other guy having a live stream that night.
So, and if I find out who he is, I'm going to give him a downvote. But now you can't give him any more downvote. Yeah. But anyways, you want a personal example?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So someone gives your video on YouTube a downvote.
Right. Okay. So, yeah. So you're saying that like you're making a decision what next, and it can get influenced in counterproductive ways if you're coming from a place of fear.
Yeah. For coming from a gullus mindset, it's like I got a downvote on my video. Should rethink my entire life.
Right.
What a fraud I am. It's like I should go wandering for 3 years as a beggar incognito till I sort my life out. People are thinking I'm exaggerating right now, by the way. So stop with the downvotes. You think it's harmless. Oh, the sound was a little bit crackly in that downvote. Yeah, you make me think my entire life.
People have no idea how much you could spin out from a bad internet comment.
It's like the people on Amazon who comment, and they're like, they give it 1 star, and then you read it. It's like the box was ripped. Like, so downvote your mail carrier. Why you?
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Should we get onto the Sikha, because I think we're
Parshas Vayeshev Tashin Nun base.
All right.
I'm having so much fun with you, Dovid.
I know. I always have fun talking to you.
It's always fun. I hope other people are having fun.
We'll never know.
We'll never know, because they can't downvote us anymore.
Yeah, and we're not going to unmute them to let them tell us.
No.
All right. So tell me about the Sikha. How are we going to do this? We're not going to go through the entire thing.
No,
what's the question?
I think we should mention some pertinent points.
Okay.
So I'll do a little segue. Remember when we were talking maybe 15 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago, I told you about that interesting thing I read in the Alter Rebbe's deposition. And
you mentioned the French Revolution.
Yeah, because the Russians were afraid of a revolution. It happened to them anyways 120 years later, but there was a revolution in France. And so let's talk about the trend of revolutions.
Okay.
Where the establishment of the monarchy, which is an ancient institution, was overthrown and replaced with democratic values and all of the cultural values that actually come along with that, all the progressivism and liberalism that the other Talmidei HaMagid, frankly, were welcoming. They saw it as an opportunity that if Napoleon should be able to defeat Russia and put the entire Europe under his rulership, they looked forward. The other Talmidei HaMagid, the other disciples of the Mezritch Magid, they looked forward to the rights and the opportunities, economic opportunities and social opportunities that would be available to Jews, and it would make life easier. And you can definitely hear the logic in that argument. I mean, after all, when Mashiach comes, the Rambam says, the benefit of having complete safety and prosperity will be that we'll be free to involve ourselves exclusively in spiritual pursuits. So you can understand why the other disciples of the Maggid would say, if Napoleon's going to make life a little easier, if I can own some land and I can not be dependent on the Poritz, and I have some protection under the law, and I'm no longer a second class or third class citizen, you could understand why the other disciples of the Maggid thought that was a good thing. Now the Alter Rebbe was very vocal, and not only vocal, but was very active in his opposition of Napoleon and backing the Tsar Paul. And the Alter Rebbe said his reasons very clear, that although it would be good for the Jews materially, it would be devastating spiritually. And what happened?
I've always had trouble with this. Is if I may be honest and vulnerable, is that because it's always been much more compelling to me, especially somebody for whom the well-being of all Jews is their job and their entire essence in life. It's hard. It's really hard for me to relate to that decision. To like the argument that the physical well-being of the Jews would be better off. It's hard for me to see it any other way. Yeah,
and certainly it's not a position that the Alter Rebbe came to in any, the argument that you're making, I'm sure the Alter Rebbe did not take lightly. Certainly, I mean,
no, for the exact reason that I'm making the argument is the reason why I know it was right as well. Is like the whole reason why it bothers me is because, like, hey, this is the single person in the world who is responsible for the safety and well-being of every single Jew in the world. So that's why it bothers me. But obviously, that's also the reason why I know. Okay, then he obviously grappled with this and came to the right decision.
Yeah, and that was the right decision for the time, as attractive as it might have been to welcome the changes, the social reform that Napoleon would have brought. And yet, so should we continue here?
Yeah.
Okay, and yet the Rebbe says that there's been a change. So the Alter Rebbe's position was right for the time, but there's been a change. And now we can actually work with the successors of Napoleon. And the Rebbe spoke specifically about France. There was a contingent from France present at the Farbrengen. And the Rebbe spoke specifically about France, about how France has become a center, a world leader in producing Torah scholarship and vibrant communities. And that's a change because historically France was considered to be such an antithetical culture. The values, fraternity, liberty, equality, were not theistic. They were not faith-based. They were very secular, humanistic values, which were antithetical to the foundations of faith, and they led to philosophies which embrace immorality and licentiousness and promiscuity. And France, for that reason, was exactly the opposite of fertile ground for Hasidus. And for that reason, historically speaking, there was not a big movement to cultivate Chassidus in France. But then something happened incrementally so first the Rebbe Maharash, the great-grandson of the Alter Rebbe, visited France.
Wait, so this is now, you're explaining how it happened?
Well, I'm explaining that it was on a continuum, that the change was gradual.
Ah.
It didn't go from something to from nothing to something overnight.
You're also pulling back the curtain a little bit and explaining how it happened, though.
Yeah, I am.
In the structure of the Sikha, maybe. I mean, this is your whole,
presents it with more suspense. Okay,
your whole job is to structure things in your own way and present all of the ideas of the Sikha.
So can I tell you honestly, Dovid?
What?
If they hired me to give a class on this Sikha, I would have held this reveal to the end.
Yeah.
And I would have been like, this is how it happened. Wow. But since we're going to talk about it, I just wanted to reveal.
So you're giving it all out.
I'm putting it all out on the table, right. And then we're gonna
pull it apart a little bit. All right.
Yeah. So I killed the suspense already. I said there was this incremental change of the Rabbi getting more and more involved with France, and there was a change that France became more and more workable, shall we say. So the Rebbe Marash made his famous visit to France, a story which is, for us, probably most well known as one of the stories in the Rebbe's first Maimer in Basi Lagani, the famous story of visiting the casino in order to find the Jew, the wayward Jew, and bring him back. And then the Rebbe Rashab visited France, I think, for the medical spas that they had. And the Friedrich Rebbe visited.
It mentions, by the way, in there that part of Ayin Beis was written in France,
which seems to be an important point, that it wasn't, that there was more to the visits, right? The part of Ayin Beis is written there. And the Friedrich Rebbe said Chassidus in France. And then, of course, the Rebbe and the Rebbitzin spent many years in France, in multiple cities in France, laying the groundwork, as it were, for the revolution that would happen during the Rebbe's Nasias. So to sum it up, basically you see that in the course of 200 years, a place which was antithetical and totally inconducive to Chassidus became a center for Chassidus. And this change is indicative of a general development in the world where, and you can correct me on my interpretation here, but a general change in the world where entities, ideas, values that had once been an impediment that would not allow Chassidus to enter have now become tools. Not just that we can get around them, they're no longer impediments because we can sidestep them, but actually they're no longer impediments because we can pick them up and use them at our will. They don't oppose us, we use them. We use them as tools for.
I'll jump in here because what I think is important, just to go back to the structure of the Sikha a little bit, is before all the France stuff. The Rebbe is talking to me. This is like the two creation myths, as academics always talk about it, like the two creation stories, right? You get one.
I always get bothered by the fact that creation's twice. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That says they get really, really upset about it. Yeah. But there's the general overview, and then this very specific version where you get to know a lot more about the details of how the story went down. And I feel like that too with here, where the first part of the Sikha is all about how just the diaspora in general, how the Jews started off in one place, and throughout all the entire Gullus, we've been going all the way around the world, and our job is to not just be the same in every place, but that Judaism is going to add to itself and gain and be different and reveal parts of itself that it couldn't before by having Jews in different places that have to conduct themselves according to the Minhag Medina, and they have that by having to act differently because of cultural differences, climate differences, anything is going to bring out new things in Torah and Judaism and whatnot, and change the world, right? But then we get this specific story. So that all sounds very nice, but what we don't have any conflict in that story. And then we get another story where there's conflict. Well, what happens when there's a place where the minhag of that place, or the culture and philosophy of that place, is in direct conflict with Torah? And it can't,
milieu, if I could use a French word.
It was what? What's
the
a French
milieu,
word?
If I could, milieu. It's a French word.
Yeah.
The overall context.
Yes.
The atmosphere.
Yes. Yeah. So what do you do when it's not going to work? When there's a conflict, and
when Jews were in Hungary and Gullus in Hungary for however many centuries, we got a lot of good food out of it. You want a good Jewish caterer, you can find a Hungarian, right? But what's France good for? France is all types of Western democratic liberalism and philosophy, and can't use it.
Yeah, so you can go on. It's just, to me, now is the story of how did we get past that, and what do we do now?
Yeah.
So please explain.
Well, that was then. This is now. There were things that couldn't be used in the past, but we'll put it this way: when Mashiach comes, we're going to use everything, and anything that's not usable won't exist, because esruach hatuma aver min haaretz. So if it can't be used, there's not going to be shalosh klippas tameis. Can I retranslate some Hasidic terms right now?
Please.
Shalosh klippas tameis, in plain English, I would call it useless.
You call it useless?
Yeah.
Uselessness?
Not uselessness. Useless. Shalosh klippas tameis means something that is useless.
Okay.
So Hashem does you a kindness and says, "Hey, guy, don't bother with that because it's useless." Makes it usher, right? Is it tied down because it's forbidden, or is it forbidden because it's tied down? So a lot of people think it's tied down because it's forbidden, like the cheap hotel bolts the lamp to the desk because they're afraid you're going to steal it.
Right.
Right? No, it's fakert. It's useless. So Hashem says, Tayek, don't waste your time with it. You're not going to be able to make anything productive out of that.
Right.
So
a via vaisatoma is a dead person. It's a person who can't be a person anymore.
Right, because tuma is the same thing. Tuma and klippa, something that can't have a function anymore, something that's useless, that has no use anymore. That's right. So there were times when certain things were, for practical purposes, useless, but they are not inherently useless. And the greatest proof of that is at some point they become useful. And the term for that would be klippas noiga. Something that's inherently useless, meaning it is essentially useless, always has been, always will be, that's shalosh klippas tameis. It's irredeemable. And it won't be part of redemption. And that's why Hashem will get rid of it. But something that is useless under a certain milieu, but can become useful when situations change, that's klippas noiga. So as we learn in Tanya, Perek Lamed Hey, Lamed Vav, Lamed Zayin, the mechanics of redemption is the elevation of all klippas noiga. So klippas noiga isn't just, a bite of food that you use the calories from, and b'koyach achila ahi, you're able to daven and learn. Klippas noiga also could be a culture, an ideology, society.
I think this is relevant here to what you're saying about klippas noiga. I don't usually like gematras. They're not exciting to me. If there are people for whom
you're bad at math.
What?
You're bad at math.
I'm not bad. All right. If you just want to say I'm bad at math.
I thought the joke about Jono being bad at math was your own working that through.
No, the joke about Jono being bad at math was me being bad at all the other things that I am bad at. Like
reading and
stuff. It's more about reading. But it just got translated into math for him.
What was the joke about him being bad at math?
I forget. He exaggerated something like a bazillion. It just said do you make jokes do you exaggerate numbers because you think it's funny, or because to cover up the fact that you don't understand the actual numbers, or something like that? It's a little bit of both. Or I think the second thing is a way to mask the first.
All right, I think the second thing is a way to mask the first thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Dovid, you're a card.
Yeah, so I don't like gematria because I'm bad at math. But this one I liked. Well, this was one that's interesting to me. Sarfas is gematria 770.
Yes, it is. And by the way, I just want to mention something. The Rebbe doesn't often do gematria.
No.
Right. But in fact, the Rebbe makes a joke about gematrias. Do you know the famous?
What's the Rebbe's joke about gematrias?
The l'chaim and the lekach. So the l'chaim is begematria lekach. But if you eat the lekach is a higher gematria, so then you have to say more l'chaim, but then then the number's too high, so you eat some more lekach until you said so much l'chaim, you can't count it anymore. Then you're okay, something like that. So yeah, it's definitely not like something that Rebbe does often. It's when the Rebbe brings a gematria, it is extremely noticeable. Yeah.
Yeah. So it pops up here. It's also noticeable because of all of a sudden you've got numbers in the middle of all of the Hebrew letters. But
by the way,
yeah,
those are Arabic numerals.
Yes. So that's another culture that we are incorporating.
I would love to go into a yeshiva somewhere and be like, I caught this kid.
Learning Arabic numerals.
There's a book that has Arabic in it. What should we do? Yeah.
So what was interesting about it to me?
What was better? Roman numerals. They destroyed the second Beis Hamikdash.
There are also Roman numerals in most books.
That's right. In the first pages, before you get to the real actual book, there's Roman numerals. That's right.
So even on the corners of the pages alone, we are already just purifying so many different cultures.
That's right.
All right.
Romans, Arabs. Give me some more numbers, Dovid.
Well, what are there other numerical systems that we use?
I don't know, but if there are any, let's use them out.
What's in the appendix? Also Roman numerals, I think.
Not sure.
All right. Yeah. So the reason why the Sarfas 770 gematria was interesting to me is because I was reading it. I was like,
but you know what, Dovid?
What?
I thought of something.
More numbers?
Yeah. The Arabs took the 0 from the Hindus.
Oh my goodness.
And you want to know something? It's cultural appropriation, and I'm proud of it.
Okay.
In fact, could we say that the whole Tzarfas Sicha is about the greatness and the necessity of Jewish cultural appropriation?
Maybe. I think that's just like shocking for the sake of shocking. It's like,
well, I'm putting out a video on YouTube right now with that very title, and I'm going to leave the comment section.
All right. Well, nobody can give you a thumbs down anymore, so
that's right.
All right. Can I say the gematria thing already?
No, you didn't. I didn't let you.
No, I said can I? Yeah, you didn't let me.
Can you say already? Go ahead.
The reason why it's interesting to me, and this is back to your Klippos Noiga stuff, is that because the Rebbe is talking all about how now that we can actually use all of this French stuff, and you're going to explain that in a moment, and the French cultural philosophical ideas and stuff, and now you can see even to the point where Sarfas is gematria 770. But I thought about it for like 5 seconds, and I thought, wait, Sarfas has always been gematria 770.
I mean, even in the Alter Rebbe's time.
Yeah. It was
even
always
in biblical times. It
was always gematria 770. You know what changed? It was not France. What changed was the Frierdiker Rebbe moved to 770.
Wow.
That's the only thing that changed.
Wow.
He just wasn't living in that house yet.
Right. And all that represents.
Yes.
And like we know from the Rebbe that coming to New York represented a revolution of Chatzikadra Tachtoin and Judaism, the center of Judaism becoming from the bottom, and the Rebbe's whole mashal with the lever lifting up the entire building from the bottom. Right.
Yeah, so the changes is in us and our ability, our changing circumstances, and our ability to be able to use different things that we couldn't use before.
So it's not that the load got lighter, but that we were able to come at it from a new angle where we could lift.
Yep.
That's great. It's great stuff.
All right, go on. Explain more stuff.
About what? About a lion's paw?
No. All right. So is there more? Did you explain the whole? That's everything you wanted to say about that sikha?
Oh, I've got a lot more to say.
All right. So keep on going.
Should I?
Oh, are we done? It's 8:58.
No, don't look at the clock. Those are Arabic numerals.
Oh, okay.
You know what my greatest dread is?
I don't. But if you're going to reveal it on this podcast, this live stream, that's
you already taught me to be vulnerable. So,
okay. Lion's paw. Go on.
The lion's paw, because I feel like I can change my mentality about this to be a Moshiach mindset. And I'm not joking, by the way, even though this is kind of funny. I don't like face clocks.
Yeah.
You know, they're called analog clocks.
Yeah, they weren't, but I mean, were they called analog clocks?
No, when I was a kid, they were called face clocks.
They were just called clocks.
They were called clocks. And, but I am a digital kid. Am I a millennial?
No.
Are you a millennial?
Yes, barely.
Are you Gen Z?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think I'm barely millennial.
What am I?
No, but I'm barely a millennial the other way. I'm almost. You're an Xer.
Are you a global teen?
I'm not. I don't even know if that's stuck.
I think I'm Generation X.
You are.
I grew up in the 70s.
Yeah. All right. So what were you going to say? Your biggest regret is clocks?
No, not my biggest regret.
I thought that's what you said.
My biggest fear.
Oh, your biggest fear. I thought you said regret. All right. Your biggest fear is clocks.
Analog clocks.
Is your greatest fear?
Yeah. Because I'll be like in an airport, let's say, and I got to get somewhere quickly and I got to figure out where I'm going. And I'll be like, oh, what time it is. And somebody will like go, there's a clock. And I won't be able to say the amount of time and Yeshiva Das that it's going to take me to read that clock will make me late for whatever it is that I'm trying not to be late for right now.
I share that with you. I can read a clock, but it takes me a long time. But have you been in situations where people refuse to read it for you?
Or old people will be like, oh, about a 9:30. No, they don't say 9:30. They say, oh, about 15:15. Right.
They just
no.
So they describe the clock to you. You don't have to actually figure
quarter. What's yourself. A quarter of what? Past 15:15. Oh, you better be there on time. We're gonna all be there at 15:15. 15:15 what?
It's like if you have a hard time reading an actual clock, you think you'd have an easier time with somebody just describing the clock to you.
Right.
All right. There was a cool video about this whole thing that we were supposed to pause for at some point, wasn't there?
Yeah, there is a video about this.
All right,
I'm going to pause.
Yes, so I think somebody's going to play it. Is that possible, or did they leave?
They probably left.
They went to go make a sandwich while we talked about lion paws.
Oh, here it is.
March on Washington for jobs and freedom, one of the most historic days in the nation's history.
Live out the true meaning of its creed, that all men are created equal.
And where no man is denied public office, merely because his religion differs from the
flower people, the hippies call themselves, as opposed to the square or straight society.
Social media was giving them broadcast power.
I liked it.
I liked it too.
2 thumbs up.
Well, I don't have the other option anymore.
Of what?
You got it. That was the reference to the no thumbs down thing that you mentioned.
Oh,
No, but I actually do like it.
I do like it. And the slogan is wield the culture, which I like. Wield the culture. Wield the culture.
So what's the takeaway? How do we wield?
How do we wield the culture? Well, obviously, we're not just speaking about France because we're not French.
Okay.
Parlez-vous français?
No.
Me neither.
I answered in French, by the way.
That's true. And sometimes that misleads people, I found. Is that you?
Nope.
Somebody's playing music. Does that mean we're done?
They're playing us off.
It's outro music. So, it's interesting that I really do like that video, by the way. A lot of the sights and the sounds there were...
You know what my favorite part of the video was?
What?
You can guess.
No, I really don't. I don't know.
When they talked about squares.
I also liked when they spoke about the squares. I didn't know you caught that because it's like quiet. It was like undertone.
I loved it.
Yeah, the square or straight society.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So can I tell you the greatest video on YouTube? Is it okay?
I mean, I guess.
Okay. The greatest video on YouTube.
Is it cats running from cucumbers?
No. Cats being shocked by cucumbers. When Moshiach comes, will cats jump from cucumbers?
Cats and cucumbers will sit side by side.
It will coexist peacefully.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite video on YouTube is Abby Hoffman talking about making gefilte fish for Dr. Benjamin Spock, and Spock being so Gentile he didn't know what it was and throwing it off the side of his houseboat.
All right.
And there's something so Jewish. And people don't know who Abby Hoffman was. He was a radical leftist political leader, rabble rouser. And he was just so Jewish. He was so Jewish. And that video of him talking about, he made gefilte fish. He talks about how he spent like all day because he made it from scratch. He ground the fish and he made gefilte fish, and then he bought it. Dr. Spock was the book guy who wrote the children's book, like How to Raise Children. Basically, not Mr. Spock.
No, not the Vulcan.
Well, Mr. Spock was played by Leonard Nimoy, who was
also Jewish. Who
right.
was Jewish.
Who
right.
was Jewish. Dr. Benjamin Spock
was
not Jewish. And Abby Hoffman is saying the guy who's Abby Hoffman says he's like so Jewish. He's like,
why was Abby Hoffman hanging out with Dr. Spock on a house?
Abby Hoffman was like a known guy. He was like, people knew him. So he used to hang out with celebrities. And he's hanging out with Dr. Benjamin Spock, who wrote the parenting book. Now, his parenting theory was basically children like little animals, basically. And, not a very godly perspective, very humanistic perspective with no soul to it whatsoever. And that was the basis for parenting. Anyways, so Abby Hoffman is like, I made gefilte fish for Spock. And he's got this thick New York accent. And he's like, and Spock didn't know what to do with the gefilte fish. And he threw it off the side of his houseboat. Anyways, I'm thinking to myself, that story about the Bacher, the Litvischer Bacher, who went to the Rebbe. And he wanted to know about a beard. And it's on the My Encounter, actually. Jem has it on My Encounter. And he was saying that, like, the beard became, like, not a thing, like, by the Litvischer Bacher, like, you're not supposed to do it. Mm. Right? And that it was, like, associated with the counterculture.
Right.
Counterculture.
With the hippies?
Like, the beatniks, I don't know, the hippies, the beatniks, whatever. And the Rebbe started speaking to him about hippies. And he was like, well, the hippies are very Jewish. And I mean, it's a yechidus, so nobody knows exactly what the Rebbe said. But the way that he recalls, he's saying the Rebbe says to him, if you ask your average non-Jew in middle America, tell me about the hippies, they would say, oh, it's one of those Jewish diseases coming out of New York. Meaning for some Midwestern non-Jew, typical American, they're going to see hippies, I'm talking about back in the 1960s, as almost synonymous with Judaism. And yeah,
at a time when most mainstream Jewish authorities would completely distance themselves from hippies.
Mainstream Orthodox Jewish authorities. And I'm not going to say where I saw this, but I was looking at a particular rabbi's very well-known sermons from the 1960s. And every sermon is railing against hippies. Every sermon is like these hippies, these scum, they're undercutting all values, they're absolute, it's very harsh language. And talking about you have to vote for McGovern, you have to vote for Nixon so he'll stop McGovern. Because whoever could stop McGovern with his liberalism, you have to vote for Nixon. Whoever is the most conservative, this is in the 60s. He's saying whoever's the most conservative candidate, you have to vote for them to stop the hippies. And I'm thinking to myself, not just this story in Yechidus with the Rebbe saying about, and let me continue though, what the Rebbe said about the hippies. The Rebbe didn't just say that the non-Jewish world looks at the hippies as Jewish, but then the Rebbe even said, yeah, they're very Jewish. He says, look, they talks about the milas of the Yidden in Mitzrayim, what the Medrash says, right? They don't change their language, their names, their culture, their dress. So he's like, look, the hippies, they have a unique way of dressing. They have Jewish names. Yeah, the Rebbe said they have Jewish names like Abby Hoffman. That's why I got there, to the Abby Hoffman gefilte fish, right? And yeah.
Wait, did the Rebbe, according to this person, specifically mentioned Abby Hoffman's name?
Oh, yes, according to this, yeah.
And the point of it was that like what, other people would be changing their names to less Jewish names, but the hippies don't care?
Yeah, or that when people say that the hippies are a Jewish movement. And the Rebbe actually also mentioned, according to this account at least, that in the 30s, if you would ask somebody who's a communist, they would say the same, oh, it's one of those Jewish diseases coming out of New York.
Right.
A liberal Jew, right? A communist is a liberal Jew, right? But the Rebbe says, the Rebbe like embraces it. And it's like, yeah, but that's true. And they're openly Jewish. They're recognizably Jewish. Obviously, they're not frum. Okay? They're not frum. We know that, obviously. And no one's telling you to learn halacha from Abby Hoffman. But as far as
make a gefilte fish from him, apparently.
But how to make a gefilte fish, yeah. But there's something so Jewish about it, about many of these counterculture figures. And the point is,
the thing that's jumping out, I hadn't heard that before, but that's amazing. And the thing that's jumping out to me is just like how unbelievably insane that would have sounded to any responsible Orthodox Jewish adult at that time.
Absolutely. You know what it would be as insane as in 2021?
Say it and shock us all.
If a campus shliach would go into the Rebbe today and say, I have a kid on my campus, he's the head of BLM on campus and anti-Zionist and pro-LGBTQT. And the Rebbe would say, you got to get that kid at your Shabbos table. Make him president of the Student Association.
Right.
I think I jumped too quickly.
Yeah, I think I was on your wavelength, but you may have to fill in the gaps.
I think I meant to get there in an hour from now. Because I've been thinking about this for years, and I've been thinking about this Sicha Vayeshev Nun Beis, and I love the slogan, the Tutalt slogan of Wield the Culture, because people don't realize how immoral France was as a culture, and I don't think they realize what it represented, and it wasn't just stam immorality, like hollow, baseless, meaningless immorality. The deepest philosophical minds came from that milieu, again, to use the French word, and justified all types of absolute selfishness. And for the Rebbe to say that we could use the opportunities that those values open up for us, that was a radical statement. I mean, what was Napoleon? Napoleon was an emperor, so the governmental system is one thing, but I'm talking about his social, what he represented as far as social change was Western liberal values. And I think it's interesting that today in 2021, if you would ask a Lubavitcher, I'm not talking about people who aren't steeped in the Rebbe's Sichos, but if you would ask them what their reaction to Western liberal values are, they would probably tell you something more similar to what the rest of the mainstream Orthodox world said
about
in
the
the 60s about the hippies. Yeah. And that surprises me. It surprises me because the Rebbe was able to make chassidim out of the hippies. The Rebbe was able to use out the
I could argue that the all of those hippies that became chassidim, they were converted from
I would say the exact opposite.
Gross hippiness.
No. So if you're saying
their gross hippiness was stripped from them and they became menschlich.
Right. Their hippiness was stripped from them. And then, no. But here's the thing. And you see this, by the way, let's not talk about controversial things like hippies. You see about how the Rebbeim would use let's talk about something that's going to bore the heck out of everybody.
Okay.
How the Frierdiker Rebbe figured out how to use Polish Bachrim. When Temche Tamimin was in Varshan, Otvotsk, and all of a sudden, who are these Polish? I mean, people don't realize today, but the cultural rift between the Russische and the Polish, and I mean, today it's all one big cholent. But you know, it was a huge cultural shift, and you see that what the Frierdiker was able to do with these Polish Bachrim, and then with
you're saying today the famous family names that people are jealous of today would have been useless names in the past.
Yeah, for sure. Anyways, but what I'm telling you is, if Lubavitch hadn't picked up those Polish in Otvotsk, I can't imagine what kind of hasogas, I'm talking about the Gashmias, the Shlichus world would have today. If it would be Russians. I mean, Russians know how to survive. Russians know how to, beat me over the head. I'm not stopping, a tank. But to do things nice, classy, appealing, that's definitely, I mean, some academic out there should do a study on that, about the Polish cultural influence on Chabad and how it was necessary in the growth of Shlichus in the latter half of the 20th century. There, I wrote half the paper for you. Some professor should go write this paper. But and then the Rebbe
you wrote the title, but to be fair, that title would take
writes itself though. But once you got the title, it writes itself. But then the Rebbe did the same thing with the Americans. I'm not talking about hippies yet. Let's build up the hippies. The Rebbe took the Americans that everybody else looked at and said, "What are you going to do with these guys? There's nothing to work with." And the Rebbe was like, no, hold on a second. You're right. They don't have the milas of the European boys, but they have their own milas. And the milas these American boys have are going to not only be workable, but in some ways become major features of the program of Shlichus. Like the whole Breitkeit, the whole, the American mentality of everything we do with Pearson, and it's big and it's signs and it's and come in and take over rent the whole venue and put it in the paper. That type of cowboy attitude the Americans brought to the world of Shlichus. That was the Rebbe saying, give me the American boys and I will do something with them that couldn't have been done with the European boys. And the same thing with the Israelis and with the Frenchies and the Brazilians. And every culture has its style. We all know that. And the Rebbe has a way of using each one of those styles in its maximum way, where when you look at it in hindsight, you're like, how could the Rebbe's army function without that addition? So yeah, the hippies. It's not that the Rebbe took guys who were hippies and made them ice hippie. Is that the Rebbe took their hippiness and made it part of conquering the world for Yiddishkeit and Torah. And you're talking about being afraid of lions, going back to where you started with, that our nervous system gets jolted when we see a lion. You shouldn't be afraid of the lion.
Yeah. Also, when I see a hippie.
So you're trying to be funny, and you are funny, Dovid.
Thank you.
But I want to tell you something. Today, no one's afraid of hippies. That's a joke. That's an anachronism.
Long hair freaky people.
Yeah, no, long-haired freaky people need not apply.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, nothing to do with them.
So, yeah, maybe 40, 50 years ago, people, a bunch of hippies congregating, loitering out front. But today, it's not hippies that people are afraid of. I'm talking about our culture. I'm talking about Lubavitchers here.
Yeah.
It's not hippies they're afraid of, but I know who they're afraid of. How do I know they're afraid of? Because I get the WhatsApps forwarded to me about who to be afraid of.
Right. We're being
Thank God I'm not on Facebook. Because all Facebook is a bunch of people telling you who to be afraid of. And that's why everyone's living in fear. Because the whole modus operandi of social media is a robot was programmed for one thing, to figure out your most triggering fear, your lion's paw, as it were, and then pop that into the algorithm as much as possible to keep you glued to that machine. So if you're afraid that the Illuminati are taking over the world, right? So trust me, David, the guys who are afraid the Illuminati are taking over the world, their YouTube feed is full of videos about the Illuminati taking over the world.
And Jews also.
And Jews, well, of course. So just notice what YouTube is feeding you. In fact, that would be an interesting Moshiach.
Wait, so you think that's the Moshiach mindset is look at all the things that the YouTube suggested videos are trying to make you afraid of.
Yes.
And then figure out how to use those in your life?
Yes. Exactly, that is what I'm saying. I'm saying when YouTube is trying to trigger you by throwing stuff at you that it knows, you're shaking your fist like, when the video title says so-and-so destroys so-and-so, and you're like, oh, I hope he destroys him, right? Stop a second. That's the thing that we have to use for our agenda.
Yeah.
Because the way it's presenting now as a tool for its agenda is a misappropriation. Gold was only created to be used to build the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. So if something exists, we need to co-opt it, culturally appropriate it, and use it. Yeah. And use
can I say this in a little less conquery way? Because just from my peaceful soul, I need to hear it said that way.
You're right, because the Rebbe said in the Sicha Parshas Noach, I think it was Nun Aleph, that we don't conquer anymore. The man's way is to conquer, and the gender of the world is transitioning. You know the Rebbe said that the gender of the world is transitioning?
You're just full of surprises tonight.
The world is becoming more feminine. We're entering Yom Shekuli Shabbos, which is Malchus. And the old masculine paradigms of force and coercion are outdated. Today, everything is through nurture. So, you win them over. You love them.
So as the more feminine of the two brothers here, I'll say this, that you're saying take those things, the things that make you afraid, and use them for our agenda. I'll say take them and figure out how they can help us discover more Torah. Like there's there's corners and spaces and little hidden nooks and crannies all throughout Torah, the space, the geography of Torah that have yet to be explored and revealed. And the way we get to them is these different ways of looking at things and these different.
That's right. That's right. And it may not be that you can do it, but if you're makar of somebody who comes from that milieu and they learn Torah, maybe they'll discover those chidushim. But instead of writing them off and saying, well, because of their political stance, they're irredeemable, which I never heard. It's a very new thing. I never heard Lubavitchers saying that any segment of Klal Yisrael was irredeemable until recently, which I blame on YouTube, Facebook, and the social media algorithms.
You blame the robots.
I blame the robots. Yeah, that's right. And so instead of saying that any segment of Klal Yisrael is irredeemable because your favorite talk radio pundit convinced you that such and such person is evil and irredeemable, how about we say, you know what? There's something that person has that Klal Yisrael needs in order to bring Mashiach, and they're misusing it right now. They're misusing it for a non-Torah or even anti-Torah agenda. But we're going to nurture the relationship and bring them over and use out their potential for Klal Yisrael.
So basically, there's a lot of things out there that are Gematria 770 already.
Just to repeat what you were saying, Tzarfas was always 770.
Yeah, but there's a whole bunch of things. I mean,
but it did. I need to
combine a lot of different letters and a lot of
most people come on for 5 minutes and leave. So I need to repeat your vort. You were making a reference to your vort from 30 minutes ago.
Yeah,
you were saying that Rebbe says Tzarfas, France, is 770. And you were pointing out, well, it was Tzarfas is the biblical name for the country. That name is thousands of years old. So it was always called Tzarfas. It was always 770. So how come it was anathema? How come we had to recoil from it as recently as 200 years ago in the Alter Rebbe's time? And today we could use it. Not that it changed. It was always 770, but we didn't have the right approach. We didn't have the right angle because the Frierdiker Rebbe hadn't come to 770 and made 770. So we couldn't tap into it. But a time came when we could tap into it. We could use it. So there's a lot of things that we couldn't use previously. We didn't have the right way to approach it. And so we were just sort of avoiding it and saying, I don't know how to deal with this. And maybe it's because we couldn't. And maybe 20 years ago, we couldn't deal with it. Or 50 years ago, we couldn't deal with it.
Like a netter. Like you make a netter that, whatever. I can't deal with that.
I can't deal with that, right? And a person takes something that's mutter and says, I can't deal with it. That's what a neder is. Al pichsidis. Somebody admitting that although this thing has a use, I'm not ready to use it properly yet. And I think the chiddush of this sikha and all of the other sikhas from that year or two was the Rebbe telling us that anything that exists in the world, obviously within the confines of halacha, and I'm going to repeat that for those who willfully want to misunderstand me, obviously within the confines of halacha, they'll still willfully misunderstand me. And I'll say it a third time. Everything within the confines of halacha can be and must be used for Jews and Torah.
All right. Are we supposed to keep on going or are we going to end at some point?
It's up to you. You have anything you want?
I think we got to a nice takeaway. The last thing is just to repeat, and I think we said it before, but repeat the empowerment message that just everybody should go do this. Everybody should be thinking about we gave a nice, or you gave a nice little exercise, like you mentioned before, and you mentioned earlier that when the Rebbe would give Rashi sichas, and then the Rebbe was surprised that people weren't you learn a Rashi sikha. Every Rashi sikha has in it the rule that the klal that Rebbe used to come up with the chiddush and the sikha, and the Rebbe was surprised that people just weren't doing that on their own. So you came up with a nice klal that an easy way to come up with new Moshiach mindsets would be to find the ideologies that you're supposed to be afraid of.
I'm going to say it even more forcefully if I haven't already. But if there's a culture that you feel as a Frumme Yid, you hate, despise, reject, or are even afraid of, and search your soul, maybe it's also fear, you have to figure out how, somehow, the existence of that ideology, that attitude, that worldview can be appropriated to further the agenda of Jews and Judaism.
Right. You can find something in it that will help you understand Torah and Judaism.
Even if it's just the willingness to engage with Avos Yisrael, those Jews who come from those ideologies. You know, can I let loose a little bit, Dovid?
You haven't yet?
No.
All right.
No, not
this is...
No, I have not. There's a lot
you've
more.
already said a lot of shocking things. But yes, please let loose. You said the world is transitioning. I'm still getting over that one.
It's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. And people will willfully take it out of context, and that's okay because they can't downvote me on YouTube anymore.
No, they
Listen,
cannot.
there's a shliach. I don't know if I should say who it is because he didn't give me permission to say it. It's not a bad thing at all.
Something good? You're going to say something nice about them?
Yeah, it's something really good. It's actually one of your biggest fans. Heck, I'm just going to say it's Baruch Hacht from Brentwood, and he's a huge Ichikaduzi fan. Do you know that?
Friend.
And a friend. He told me a great story. To me, it was just great. He said that after Trump got elected, the next morning in shul, everyone is happy. Who's his clientele? Morning minion. It's like a lot of Persians. It's Brentwood. It's like an upscale neighborhood in LA. And so he said everyone was happy. And he said he looked on the Shluchim Achdus, the forum where the Shluchim are posting, oh no, what am I going to do? How am I going to face my people? They're going into like absolute shutdown. They I don't even know how to talk to them. They're panicking. They're saying they're going to leave the country. And he's like, I'm looking around like, I'm not having that experience. My whole minyan is happy. And he said, now I realize I haven't been doing enough mitzvayim. Because if I'm surrounded currently by one type of person, clearly I need to hit the streets.
Right.
Because the Jewish world is full of people who are not happy about that. Why are they not here?
Right.
I got to hit the streets because if my Chabad house looks like one segment of Klal Yisrael, that's a problem. That's a problem. So I think what happened is that Baruch Hashem, the Rebbe was so successful with shlichus that it became normalized. And now we have the luxury to only surround ourselves with people who we consider to be easier to talk to. 20 years ago, it was understood that every Shabbat table at every shliach's house is going to have someone who's going to say a radical political position. It was just known. That's Shabbat dinner, that you're going to have somebody who's going to espouse some radical political position. And that's part of the fun. That's part of the mix. And now I guess there's so much success, at least for some.
Are you suggesting that sometimes now we are actually converting the hippiness out of the hippies and losing something in the process?
I'm saying that the hippies aren't hippies anymore, and that's not because of Chabad. That's just because of that happened in general society. But I'm saying the hippies of today, the young radicals of today, of 2021, why are they not at our Shabbos table if they aren't? Why aren't we engaging them? And if they won't come to the Shabbos table, then why aren't we standing in the park engaging them? Why aren't we finding Jews who have who we have the hardest time speaking politics with and putting tefillin on with them.
Wait, so that's your big shocking message is we should put tefillin on with liberals who scare us, and not. I thought your shocking message was that we should do that and then also learn from them.
Well, you're not going to learn anything from it until you put tefillin on them. First, put tefillin on them.
Right.
First, have them at your Shabbos table. Give them a hug and eat some chicken soup together. Sing a nigun together. And then automatically you'll learn stuff from them. When you learn Torah with people, you learn stuff from them. And you'll say, hey, you know what? That's good. Could use that. Oh, that thing you're doing? That's a good thing. Let's use that. Let's use that. Let's use that. Let's use that.
Right.
When the Rebbe said the Sikh about Tzarfas, he wasn't saying to go learn Voltaire, Chas v'shalom. The Rebbe wasn't saying, you know what we really need to do? We can just fill 770 with a bunch of books by Michel Foucault. Not what the Rebbe was saying. The Rebbe was saying, if there's a certain attitude, look, every Crown Heightser knows what the Frenchie attitude. You know, Tishrei comes, the Frenchies are on their way. If you could take that Frenchieism, that Frenchie-kite, and use it to bring Mashiach, not only you can, you must. So what's the tzarfas of today? And I'm not even making such a big leap to make this gzera shava, because if you understand the cultural context of that sikha, you understand what does the French Revolution and its culture represent. It represents liberal Western values.
Right.
It's not a jump. I'm not making a gzera shava from one thing to another. I'm saying that in that sikha is speaking about harnessing liberal Western values. So why are we hiding from it as if the Rebbe hadn't given us the tools of Chassidus? I understand if you don't have Chassidus, then you have to build higher ghetto walls. I understand if you don't have Chassidus and you have no way of appropriating those things and using them for Yidden and for Yiddishkeit, then you have to hide from them. But if you were given the tools of Chassidus, then we have to go take from those cultures. And forget, I don't even mean cultures plural, because each one of us lives in one culture, most of us. Just the culture that's around you. Just when you go grocery shopping, whatever the Jews that you meet at the grocery store are talking about, whatever they're into, okay? I'm not telling you to go find out what movies they're watching, God forbid, and go watch their movies and read their novels. That's not what the Rebbe was saying in that sikha either. What it's saying is, find out how a Jew like that thinks, and there's something about that thinking that can be brought over to Torah.
Okay. All right. So that's all that you just gave us homework to do to find our Moshiach mindsets. I mean, it is a Moshiach mindset in and of itself. We just learned it from the Sikha, and it's a way to expand our Moshiach mindset is go find somebody whose politics scare you and figure out how you're going to understand Judaism in the world better because of them, of how they think.
Yep.
All right. Awesome.
But that's not my culture.
Yeah. What liberal anthem are you going to sing?
Oh, that's a good. We're not allowed to do that. That's a Rebbe thing.
Okay.
You can't. To that level, I can't go, but. Yeah.
All right. Were we supposed to
say, you know what I would say, Dovid?
Yeah.
I would say that wrapping the sea would be, does everyone know about wrapping the sea? Wrapping the sea was the Parsha report. Itchik Geduzi show Parsha report for Parshas Bashalach.
Yes, it was.
In 2002 or something.
5, 4, I don't know.
2005, 2004.
2006, I think it was.
And Jono says a Kriyas Yamsuf rap.
Yeah.
And you got lambasted. You got hate mail.
Yeah.
You got hate mail.
Because it was goyish.
That it was goyish. What do you say to that, Dovid?
Yeah.
I think the other thing you got lambasted for
was Godzilla.
Parshas. I'm a big student of Itchik Keduzi, as is Rabbi Hapt from Brentwood has studied it. Parshas, I believe it was Mikates, where Yosef became the ruler of Mitzrayim. And so it was all about Yosef becoming the ruler and something about being a leader of a government.
Yeah, being the vice president. And then Jono was running for vice president or something.
And then Jono was running for vice president against King Kong.
Yeah.
King Kong?
Yeah, I forget what the tickets were. Yeah, it was King Kong. Yeah.
And you got lambasted. Is that the right word? Am I using the right word?
Lambasted?
Oh, it's lambasted?
I don't know. I like putting the accent in weird places and seeing what happens. All right. We can go on forever, Shais. I think we should have mercy on people and say that we have finished.
Really?
I mean, unless somebody...
Can I tell you something about us, Dovid? I want to tell you something about us.
Tell me something about us.
I've learned this recently. And I'm not saying this is true about all of the people who listen to me, but I think it's true of a lot of them. I get bored of hearing myself talk a lot sooner than they get bored of hearing me listen. I had to get over that inferiority complex. I would always cut things short because I figured everyone's bored. But that I really believe that.
I'm coming from the place where 3 minutes is my cap on how long I think people will listen to what I have to say. I make videos like 3 minutes, 7 minutes, maybe if you've got a really interesting story.
Can I tell you something, David? I make videos that are half an hour. And I also think, how is anyone listening after 90 seconds? But I think people want to hear about this, David. I think they're interested in your unique. You've got an interesting take on things, David.
Thank you. I do. Isn't that the point? Thank you. That's the point. Is everybody's got an interesting take.
And everyone's got an interesting take on things that is a product of their cultural milieu.
Yes. You like using that word now.
Well, it's a French word.
Yeah.
Croissant.
What? Do you say croissant?
Croissant.
Crescent?
Crescent. Crescent.
Croissant?
Oh, he said it.
Baguette?
Baguette. Yeah, baguette. So tell us a little bit about using the cultural milieu.
Oh, so that was your point. That's why you were talking about those Ichikaduzi videos where I used things that were from like modern American culture. And
Masa Medina doesn't just mean English, Russian, French, Spanish. A language isn't just a language. A language is a set of references.
Right. Well,
a way of talking, not just the words you use, but the ideas and the context.
So I think that the question at that time, and I think this is relevant, is like, okay, well, who is this for? Is this a kiruv? Is this kiruv for the outsiders, in which case using their language can be justifiable, or is it for as insiders, in which case exposing our Teire Kinder to King Kong and to rap music is a bad influence. And it seems like what we're suggesting here is, again, with the disclaimer that you said, of course, as long as it is not in conflict with everything is LP, as long as it's LP halacha, we're kind of taking down that barrier and saying like, well, it's not for kiruv isn't for them.
No, I'm not saying that. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, look.
I'm saying it though. What I'm saying.
Oh, you're saying that. I wasn't saying that.
What I'm saying now is
what their children should be exposed to.
And what you say?
If Chabad.org gets through the filter on your internet in the house, that means they're also reading articles about divorce. So what? So Jono was rapping. So you have to make a decision whether or not to let that into your house.
But I
want to empower parents.
You're empowering parents to make their own decisions about internet filters. But what I think that there's a flaw in the original question, which is like, is it for the outsiders or is it for us? And I think the flaw is that actually nothing's that when we, first of all, the whole outsider or insider thing is silly, but doing the things that we're doing for other people are not for other people. They are for us. We're all doing it together, and we're also already part of it together. Like the assumption that we're somehow not part of that culture already is we're living here and we're in it. And the question is, how are we going to interact with it, and what are we going to learn about ourselves and Judaism?
So here's what I'll say, so people will not have to be unnecessarily upset at me. They can be upset at me only as much as necessary. I think Winston Churchill was the one who said the definition of an anti-Semite is someone who hates Jews more than necessary. So I don't want anyone to be mad at me more than necessary. Let me explain something to you like this. Pinya Korf, Olav Shalom. So one of the famous things is he walked into the Zal on the day that the Iran terrorist, there was a whole thing in 1979, I believe it was, where there was hostages in the embassy, U.S. embassy in Tehran, and it was like the front page news every day for a year. And then they got out, and Pinya Korf came into yeshiva, and everyone was talking about it. And what are you talking about? He didn't even know that such a thing existed. Am I saying that Pinya should have learned about it? He would have taught Chassidus better? No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, because his cultural milieu was authentically, he was the Russian Neville style. That was his style. So it's his job to teach from that milieu. But if there's somebody who does know about those things already, then it's his job to teach that kind of style, that language. I'm not saying people should go out and consume non-Jewish culture. I'm echoing what you're saying. You're saying we already have it by cultural osmosis. You're already aware of it. You're already exposed to it. So it's not a question.
What are we doing with it? Are we just ignoring it, or are we
right? So you know that it exists. If you lived in a ghetto where you didn't even know about it, okay, fine. So you don't know about it. So please don't go and find out about it. But you do know it exists. So now that you know that it exists,
like we said before, Tzarfas was always Gematria 770. It only became relevant once the Figure Rebbe moved into 770.
There's a story that Rebbe told about a guy that when they did the Hachtorah for Nikolai, for Nicholas II, he was Nicholas Romanov, the one who got killed in 1917. We spoke about him earlier. He got shot by the Bolsheviks. But anyways, there was a Nikolai, Nicholas I, from like 70, 80 years earlier. So there was some old guy in Lubavitch who said he heard everyone's talking that Tsar Nicholas got coronated. I don't understand. He got coronated when I was a kid. This guy didn't know. He didn't. Right. He didn't. In Lubavitch, even that was considered a mufshat. It was considered a guy who's out of the loop. And the Rebbe told the story, Lamal Yusa, not to laugh at the guy, that was a beautiful thing. He had a certain purity. Let's make sure everyone understands. A guy who doesn't know that Nicholas I died and there were 2-3 czars in between, and then a Nicholas II got coronated. That's beautiful. Great. We don't want to, we're not here to teach shluchim to be cool and which newspapers to read, chas v'shalom. What we're saying is you live in a cultural milieu already. Everyone lives in a culture. Everyone lives in a culture. So just what culture do you, Bashgacha Pratas, live in? And what from that culture is not yet being used to advance Yiddishkeit? And the answer to that question is probably the same stuff that's bothering you right now. And the reason it's bothering you is because it's not being used to advance Yiddishkeit. So you're experiencing it as antagonistic. But it's your job, that Ebb is saying, I believe.
Can I play devil's advocate?
Make it not be antagonistic.
Can I play devil's advocate and ask you, why isn't it our job then to be mevar Western conservative values?
It is. Of course it is. Of course it is. It's our value to be Mavarer everything that Alpi Torah can be used to advance the agenda of the Jewish people. I was only focusing on liberalism because the Sikha is actually about liberalism. Napoleon represented a major watershed. The French Revolution itself represents probably the most tumultuous watershed event in the promulgation and advancement of Western, what we refer to as Western liberal values in history. And the Rebbe is referring to it in that context.
Right.
And saying all the cultural fallout, the negativity that came from it is undeniable. And im kol zeh, with all of that, there comes a time where we have to put it to work. So you live in a culture already. You live in a culture already. What's up, David?
I was just looking at my WhatsApp to see if they were trying to. I muted it, and I was looking at it to see if we were being asked to stop yet. They said we can go as long as we need to.
See, David, that's part of your insecurity.
Yeah,
David, who hurt you? No, don't answer this. Probably me. Oh my gosh, David's 7 years younger than me, so any trauma he has, probably I was involved. Okay. All right. David, you got to get over your inferiority complex. They want to hear you. The people want to hear you, David.
The reason I keep on looking at my watch, looking at my clock that I can't read is because
it's an analog face clock.
It's an analog face clock, yeah. I got frozen pizza waiting for me is the real answer.
Oh, really? And I'm ruining that?
But no.
Frozen pizza honestly, is cultural appropriation.
That pizza is cultural appropriation.
Can I tell you something, David? Isn't it funny that like herring is like this Chassidish Michael, herring. Oh, herring, herring.
Yeah.
It's so Jewish, right? Herring is so Jewish.
Yeah.
You think in Bavel they ate herring?
Absolutely.
You think so? You think Rav and Shmuel had herring?
I think they ate kugel and herring.
And pcha. And yapchik.
Knedelach.
Yeah. So my point is that I think you were saying this before as well, that wherever Jews have been.
You know what they did? They ate kutach.
Kutach habavli. What is kutach habavli? It's like
bread crust.
Bread crust?
It's moldy bread.
Moldy bread.
Or stale. I'm not sure if it's moldy or stale. Maybe both. And it's just like mixed up with whey, I think.
Yeah. No way.
and turn into some sort of dip, and then you dip more bread into it.
Yeah. And imagine if you would bust that out at some bris in Borough Park. And people are like,
by the way, there is a whole discussion in Gemara, an argument between the Israeli Amoraim and the Babylonian ones about whether kutach is good.
Right, because they had a little different culture.
Yeah.
Rava.
Yeah, so that was a cultural thing that they included.
Yeah, it talks about
it's part of it's like you could sit and learn just the recipe for kutach habavli, and you'd be yitzid limanat Torah.
You'd be chayiv in birkas haTorah.
What?
You'd be chayiv in birkas haTorah.
You'd be chayiv in birkas haTorah. Yeah, and make a bracha.
Write it up. To ha'ara. Yeah.
Write what up? Just the recipe for kutach habavli?
Yeah.
All right. I have personally, I feel like we've gotten where we need to go. Do you have more in you that you need to get out? I've said what I need to say.
It's all up to you, David.
I feel like we've gotten to a good place. I think that, again, the only thing that I would reiterate is just how important it is for everybody to do this on their own, to play with it's playfulness. And to me, the most important part of these types of conversations we have together is the playfulness. Everybody should just have
whimsical.
It's
whimsical. Sort of whimsical.
Play with the ideas and move
have
the
fun.
pieces around and come up with new ones. And that's how, I mean, the only way to get a Moshiach mindset, if you strip down everything else, it just like in a simplest form, or at least a simple part of it, is that it is a way of looking at the world that you are not currently looking at the world. So in order to get to a Moshiach mindset, you have to look at things differently, and everybody should take some time and get together and do it, whether it be learning sikhs to find new pathways to open, or even just talking about it and thinking about it and playing with ideas together or alone.
By the way, can I stop you a second? Because you said a word, a huge word, and you glossed over it. You said to learn a sikha, to find pathways.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of people, when they learn a sikha, they want to know pshat, which is very important, and they want to be able to give over pshat. They don't necessarily see it as a pathway. You're laughing because you don't talk to people, so you don't know how people learn. But I'm
laughing because you're right. You picked out something interesting. Can I tell you a secret? People see me sometimes at shul learning weird, obscure Maimonim, and I look smart when I do it. But the secret is, a lot of the times I'm just doing it until I find an interesting Maimon Mekomis, and I just follow that to like some Gemara I never learned before or something, and just stay there. Just as an example of finding pathways.
Yeah. Like the wiki trance, where you just keep clicking link after link after link. So you look up Mara Mekaimes, and it takes you one place, takes you to another place, takes you to another place. Yeah. But not even that. I think finding pathways means, and then after you've explored a hyperlink of a hyperlink of a hyperlink, now you have a mahalach hamachshava. You have a new way of thinking, and you apply it to a subject that you didn't even study inside.
Right.
And this is what you were talking about before. You know, you're saying that Rabbi Shapiro taught you, when you learn a sikha, it's a derech halimud. It's a way of thinking. He has a great story, by the way, of when he went to a Farbrengen. He was a bacher. He went to a Farbrengen in Boston. He made a Yud Tes Kislev Farbrengen with J.B. Soloveitchik. And he said Soloveitchik spoke for like 2.5 hours. So you're all insecure that we spoke for not even an hour and 55 minutes. J.B. Soloveitchik spoke for 2.5 hours. And anyways, afterwards, there was a Farbrengen, and the Brisker were very into Rambam, especially Hilchos Tshuva. So the Rebbe had been saying sichos about Geras HaTshuva from the Rambam, and about Geras HaTshuva from Tanya. And so they were speaking in Yonim of Hilchos Tshuva. Anyways, they wrote up a duch. Label Shapiro and whatever other Bacham there were, they wrote up a duch to the Rebbe, and they said that we spoke about these concepts, Hilchos Tshuva, and the Rebbe like circled it. The only comment, I believe, that he made on the duch was Bevadai Shoklu v'Torah b'Inyonim Shalahem v'Leirak Masha Meduber b'Hisvadas. Certainly, they engaged in a give and take with their own ideas, and not merely that which was said at the Farbrengens. And the Rebbe was referring, of course, to his own Farbrengens, the Rebbe's Farbrengen, meaning he would have been disappointed to hear that these Bachram had only hazard the sichas that the Rebbe said at the Farbrengens.
Right.
They wanted, and you could say maybe it's because the Rebbe wanted that the Rav, that Rav Soloveitchik should see that the Lubavitcher Bacha can learn, he can hold his own enigla. But I think it was a general approach of the Rebbe that say Chedushim. Did you learn? Did you learn what I said? Then show that you learned it. Say your own. Say your own. That's what the Rebbe was very into, the Ha'aris and writing up your own scholarly articles, and that's very important. It's a part of your part of your development as a study, as a student of Torah, to be able to think creatively and critically.
Yes, so we are encouraging everybody to be mechanish their own eschatological chedushim.
Yes, we are. I can tell you're really in pain, so I don't want to.
I want that pizza.
You want that pizza?
Were we supposed to do a question and answer thing? Was that
no? I don't like Q&A.
All right, good. We're not doing that. We asked each other questions.
We asked each other questions.
We answered them.
And we answered them.
All right. I'm gonna go eat pizza.
Okay, that's an Italian word.
That is an Italian word. Is it pizza? It means pie.
Is that true?
I believe so. Can any Italians correct me? Hang on. We're going to make this go a little bit longer because I'm going to find out how to say pie in Italian and see if I'm right.
Ask Rabbi Lazar. He'll say it with the accent even.
Oh, it says torta. And I was wrong.
Torta's probably a cake, though.
Now I'm going to, all right. I'm going to translate pizza from Italian from
pizza, like that. Pizza.
And English.
Spaghetti.
Oh, you know what pizza translates as into English?
What?
Pizza. According to Google Translate.
Cultural appropriation complete.
All right.
I want to tell you one last story, then we're going to go.
Please do.
One last story, and somebody send this man a pizza to make up for the one that I ruined. What's your Cash App? Someone send this guy $20 in Cash App so he can get a pizza.
I didn't order a pizza. I have frozen pizza. I can go make it.
Okay, so listen to me. Remember when I got really obsessed with antipodes?
Yes.
Okay.
The biblical antipode?
Antipodes. Yeah, it's called antipodes. Antipodes. It's spelled A-N. Let me do it like spelling bee. A-N-T-I-P-O-D-E-S. Antipodes.
Oh, it's not antipode? It's antipodes?
No, antipodes. Like antithesis, not antithesis.
Right.
Antipodes. Antipodes, anti means against. Pod is like foot, like a podiatrist is a foot doctor. So antipodes means if you stand on the earth is a ball. You stand at any point of the earth, your feet are pointing toward the center of the earth. So the person on the exact opposite side of the earth, his feet are pointed towards yours. So like in England, they refer to Australia as the antipodes because it really is like almost as far halfway around the world. When you're at the antipodes from any given point, every point on the earth has its antipodes. And when you're at the antipodes of any given point, so it's like actually the JFK flight, I don't think they have it anymore, but JFK used to have a flight to Singapore. Depending on the winds, they would fly east or west because it was equidistant. When you're at that point of being that far away, each way is so. If you go to the antipodes of Jerusalem, let's say, which is in the middle of the South Pacific Sea, there's no land there. But if you took a boat to the antipodes of Jerusalem, you'd have 10 men stand on the deck of a boat in a circle, all facing outward, and they could daven Shemini Esrei. Because every direction of the compass would be equidistant to Yerushalayim. So I got really obsessed with antipodes because the Rebbe starts talking about this concept of chotzi kadra tachtoin, about the lower hemisphere, right? And you got to get under it. What is the lower hemisphere? Eretz Yisrael is the top. That's why we call it aliyah. It's always aliyah, going up, because we have a boreal-centric view. You know what a boreal-centric view is?
No.
Well, you know what aurora borealis is?
The northern stars.
Northern lights. Boreal means northern. Aurora means boreal-centric means a northern biased view. So whenever you look at a globe, north's on top. What's happens? Why north's on top? Why is north on top?
Yeah, why?
Because we're boreal-centric.
Okay.
But we shouldn't be, because as Yidden, we should be Eretz Yisrael-centric.
Which is what?
That Israel would be.
What would the word be?
What?
What would the word be?
I don't have a word for it yet. But listen to me. You put Israel, you reorient the globe so Israel's on the top of the globe.
Yeah.
And Yerushalayim is the pole. Like the North Pole, South Pole. Here's the pole of Kedusha. And then the exact opposite, the antipodes of that, is the pole of not yet Kedusha. And that's where we have to go. The Rebbe is saying, which was Chof Chasiva, the Rebbe coming to America, was getting up underneath the world and lifting the whole thing up, right?
Where is that? But is it in America?
I said 5 minutes ago, it's in the middle of the South Pacific Ocean. There's no land.
I'm sorry, I was looking up the pronunciation of the word.
Of what? Pizza or antipodes?
No, it's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Okay.
South Pacific Ocean. The closest land to it, you remember the closest land to it is Rapa-Iti.
Yes.
And I contacted the Polynesian studies expert and I asked him if there's a connection between Rapa-Iti and Rapa Nui, because Rapa Nui people, their mythology says they're the belly button of the world. And the Rambam refers to a concept called Tabara Oretz, which some of Farshim say means the opposite or the antipodes of Yerushalayim. And I texted or I emailed this Polynesian studies expert and asked him, and he said, Rabbi, stay away. Do not tarnish your reputation and your good name by getting involved in Polynesian studies. It is a veritable viper's den. He scared me off. He told me that the Polynesian studies professors are all cutthroat.
Yeah.
So I stayed out of it. But you know that when I get interested about a concept, I find the experts about it in the world, and I email.
I want to know: is there any like academic study that is not a viper's den?
They're all viper's dens, because you got to understand, in the academic world, you're jockeying for position with some ridiculously like specific expertise. I wanted to study something. I'll talk about another time, maybe, about how the Tzemach Tzedek said that the Alter Rebbe told him before his Histalkus that the whole Teres of Baal Shem Tov was revealed through the battle plans of Frederick the Great at the Battle of Leuthen. And so I contacted an expert of European history to ask him about the Battle of Leuthen, Frederick the Great. Yeah. And this guy told me his entire expertise is figuring out which zip codes in America have the most representatives of Shtetelach from Europe. And he asked me if I could get him a tzach list. Okay, at any rate, I'm getting off the point here.
Okay.
So the Antipodes, the Rebbe said, the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin came to America, up underneath the world, to the opposite place from where Torah was given. This is the head of the world. You got to come to the bottom. From the bottom, you have leverage. You lift it. You lift the whole world. Okay. And Ulay Yesh Loimer, I mean, not even Ulay Yesh Loimer, it's pretty explicit in the Sikha. Let me have confidence, is that our ability to lift up a lot of stuff that couldn't be lifted before, like you were saying before, that until the Frierdiker Rebbe came to 770, you couldn't be Mevar Tzarfas. So the ability to lift up a lot of stuff that couldn't be lifted before was because the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin came to America, to this geographical location, which is the bottom of the world, if you put Eretz Yisrael on the top. So I wrote an article about this, and I put it out in the Huffington Post, which is, to me, by the way, part of what we're talking about. Huffington Post is a very, very, liberal. I don't know if it still is, but 10 years ago, whenever I put this thing out, and it's a very liberal platform, and I put out this article about the Chav Chesivan, and I tried to translate it into words that would be relevant to regular Americans. Anyways, so, and in that article, I wrote a sentence. It said something like, if the land of Israel is the pole of holiness in this world, where is its antipodes? That was some sentence like that. So a few years later, I got interested in antipodes again, and I wanted to learn more about it. So I Googled the word antipodes. And the first result that came up was some dictionary website, where the whole purpose of this dictionary website was that they would find across the web modern usage of rare terms and show you how to use that word in a modern context. And it was mine. So I go to the dictionary. I go to the dictionary site, and it says the word antipodes. It says modern usage. If the land of Israel is the pole of holiness in the world, where is its antipodes? Linking back to my Huffington Post article.
So it became this weird recursive loop that ate itself.
And so listen to me. And after that happened, I said, it's interesting. I used a fancy English word to explain a concept in Chassidus. And now the world is using a concept in Chassidus to explain a fancy English word. That is Chotzi Kadra Tachton. What does Chotzi Kadra Tachton mean? It means that the cultural appropriation is so complete that the word, the Hasidic term, is the only way the world has to describe itself. When the professors will be forced to use Hasidic terminology and ideas to talk about their own field of expertise, that's Mashiach. But how are they going to know those things if we're not teaching them, if we're afraid of them, if we try to cut them out and say they have nothing to offer? They have everything to offer. They have a language. Let's use that language. To say we don't want to use the language of a certain ideology is patently ridiculous. Say we don't want to use the language of a particular nation. Oh, you can't translate Chassidus into Russian. You know how many pogroms were started by Russians?
Right.
We have to translate Chassidus and engage in serious discourse about Chassidus in every language and every subcultural jargon.
All right.
Go eat your pizza.
Thank you. All right. Good luck to everybody, and especially to you. Not especially. I don't wish you a better week than I wish everybody else, but
just one like everyone else, Dovid.
But you're my brother, and I love you, and I'm happy we got to talk to you.
You're my brother, and I love you, and thank you. It's always so fun to talk to you.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.